morning and welcome to Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church this Memorial Day weekend. Oh, I'm so glad y'all are here too. Cedar Lane is a liberal religious community where we gather to explore the eternal, nurture community, and build a more just world. We are a community where love works. Whomever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are in your spiritual journey and whatever your life circumstance, you are welcome here. If you are new to Cedar Lane, we have a small gift for you. So will you please raise your hand if you're new? And if you would keep it up so that we can get that gift to you to thank you for visiting with us this morning. All are invited to linger after the service to enjoy coffee and conversation. And if you choose to use a yellow mug, our members and friends will be sure to warmly greet you. Our lay pastoral visitors work closely with our ministers to support the pastoral ministry of our congregation. If you have a pastoral need or concern, our on-call visitor will be available by the Joys and Sorrows candle table after the service if you'd like to talk. Before we move into our worship time, I have a few brief announcements to share. First, after the service today, I invite you to join us up in front of the Chalice House for the dedication of our memory wall. And second, this Friday is the deadline for the Get Plugged Into Community Photo Contest, which I've been seeing some photos come in for that. Third, next Sunday is our annual Flower Communion service, a spirit-filled worship for the whole family, where we will share different flowers representing how we are all unique. I invite you to please bring a flower to the service to share, and we'll have extras available as well, just in case you forget. And last, also next Sunday, you're invited to our all-church picnic, which is the culmination of our Spring Bee. And now I invite you to turn and greet your immediate neighbors. Good morning. Hey, dude. There. This is on Zoom.
Good morning, Miss Jasper. Lovely to see you.
Okay.
How are you today, Michelle?
And now let us enter into this time and space of worship. Let us enter into this time made sacred by our presence to celebrate the lives we've been given and to bless others in our community. To start us off, we're going to sing together. So please rise in body or in spirit, and let's sing Now We Sing of the Brave of Old, number 107 in the hymnal.
Never We gather with hearts open to each other,
with minds open to the unfamiliar,
with spirits open to the flow of life and love.
We gather as friends and as strangers,
As newcomers and familiar faces,
as people of different ages and unique stories, each of us alone,
all of us together, many yet one.
we gather as a beloved community,
Discerning, empowering, and compassionate, interconnected with all beings.
we gather to sing and to be silent, to remember and to celebrate.
We gather to worship. As William Perry, who is our designated keeper of the flame, kindles the chalice this morning and comes forth. I just wanted to take a moment to recognize William's ministry to us, which has been for the past year to recruit members and friends of Cedar Lane to light the chalice during worship. And this morning, as William lights the chalice, we would like to issue an invitation for someone to join him in this shared ministry for next year. And if you are interested, please do speak to William. So would you please rise in body and or in spirit to share from your order of celebration the chalice lighting words.
In honor of those who have served
And those who continue to serve
at
home and abroad for peace and in war, we light our chalice and we offer our thanks.
We gather, as we always gather, in sacred space, a place set aside as a sanctuary amid the many challenges of life, a center from which we may gather strength to face these challenges with courage, with grace, and with the spirit of justice. In this time of reflection, we lift up those in our community who are living through significant passages, the small and extraordinary milestones of life. We pause to be present to our spiritual companions and to the concerns of our own hearts. May all who gather here be held in the embrace of this community of care. It is with sorrow that we announce the death of Cedar Lane member Bud Mueller. Bud was an early member of the church, and we had celebrated his 100th birthday earlier in this past fall. Details are to come for a celebration of his life. We are also sorry to announce the death yesterday of longtime member Jack Elliott. We send our condolences to Carol. We send healing wishes to Betsy Binks, who is recovering from a fractured leg which occurred while she was on vacation in Rome. Betsy is now at home and recovering. We also send healing wishes to Jim Anderson's young grandniece, Hannah Yago, who received a heart transplant last night. Today, Hannah's family remembers the donor's family with deep gratitude and love. For these friends of ours and for all the joys and sorrows that remain unspoken in our hearts, let us turn to the peace and solace of prayer, silence, and song.
As we finish this month on the theme of blessing, I'd like us to take a moment to focus our attention inward. We can each use some blessing too, after all. I imagine we've faced times of struggle and challenge, disappointment and loss, and that we have to find a way to get through them. For a time at least, our heart is heavy or even scarred. So let us take some time this morning to focus some blessing energy inward, into ourselves. I invite you to close your eyes and imagine yourself filled with a bright light. Imagine the light growing from your heart to fill your entire body. See the light in your torso, your arms, hands, and fingers. See the light in your legs and feet, through your neck all the way to the crown of your head. Allow yourself to be blessed with this bright, vibrant light. And as you feel moved, allow yourself to smile. Smile with the blessing you're giving yourself. Blessed be. During our moment of silence, if you are experiencing a loss or commemorating the anniversary of a loss, you're invited to stand in mourning and memory until our music begins. What do the living owe to the dead? Every tribute we offer to those who have been our teachers and guides, to those who have loved us and made it possible for us to become who we are. Every tribute we offer falls short of paying the debt that we owe to them. And this comes back to the original premise of Memorial Day. What can we now do for those who gave themselves in what they at least believed was the defense of freedom, the land, and the people they loved? To be human is to live in a world that consists not just of those around us in the moment, but also is created of the wisdom and folly of those who have come before and the needs of those who come after. We live in the midst of a great cloud of witnesses, physical ancestors and spiritual forebearers, as well as those whose sacrifices have made our lives possible. To fail to acknowledge this continuity in our debt of memory to the dead is to live in a shallow, rootless, fleeting present, unconnected to the dignity of our human heritage. The older we are, the richer and more intricately woven our lives, the more we are likely to operate in a community of the living and the dead, whose imperishable memory forms the foundation of our own being. Memorial Day urges us to call these presences explicitly to mind, lest we forget.
I go with you.
Members of the choir, Henry, Jasmine, thank you. Thank you for that blessing. Before I begin, I want to take a moment to recognize my dear colleague and friend, the Reverend Ken McLean, who is worshiping with us this morning, our Minister Emeritus, who's welcome home, Ken. Memorial Day originally became part of our national calendar in the years after the Civil War as a day to honor the war dead. It began, as you may know, as Decoration Day, a day when soldiers, military families, and friends would go to cemeteries and place flowers and flags upon the graves of those who had died in the Civil War. So it began not as a national holiday, a long weekend to take off to the Eastern Shore, or eat and drink at a neighborhood barbecue, or shop for the latest Posturepedic mattress or car, but as a day of solemn remembrance. In a New York Times op-ed column last year, columnist Charles Blow quotes Professor David Blight, a professor of history at Yale, who wrote, and I quote, "Memorial Day has been founded by African Americans in a ritual of remembrance and consecration. The war, they had boldly announced, had been about the triumph of their emancipation over a slaveholders' republic. They were themselves the true patriots." End of quote. Now, knowing this historical fact, I am astounded. I try to place myself before the people who conceived the idea for this day and to imagine with what deep understanding and weary compassion and hope they came together to honor those who sacrificed life and limb to preserve the Union and to end the pernicious custom of slavery. Now, Charles Blow writes, "Honoring sacrifices can exist apart from endorsing missions. Some of our wars are those of disastrous execution, others of deceptive inception, some a bit of both, but they are all ours." In other words, he is saying that it is possible to properly acknowledge and remember the sacrifices of soldiers, even if we do not endorse the wars that sent them to their slaughter. So Blow's contention about the drift away from Memorial Day's original purpose among the general public as well as our elected officials is due to the diminishing personal stake on the battlefields that came about after the transition to an all-volunteer military in 1973. He points out that neither President Obama nor most of the presidential candidates ever served in the military, nor did their children, siblings, or spouses. In 2016, less than 18% of the combined members of the U.S. House and Senate had active duty military service on their resume, down from 80% from 1977. And according to the Defense Manpower Data Center, as of January 31st, 2016, close to 1.4 million people serve in the U.S. Armed Forces, which is 0.4% of the American population. Sebastian Junger, who's a journalist and director of the award-winning documentary Restrepo, came out with a new book recently called Tribe, on Homecoming and Belonging. In his book, he addresses this particular issue of the consequences of an all-volunteer military. And he argues that the misalignment of our culture of acquisitive individualism and military service tends us to regard veterans as somehow being damaged, as victims and outsiders, rather than as full members of our society. He contrasts our approach to that of Israel's, which has the draft where everyone is required to serve soon after they graduate high school for at least a few years. And he lays out a clear case of how the reintegration that happens to people who serve in the Israeli military is a lot more effective and wholesome than what we find here in the United States. He also talks about how much more attuned people are to the realities of war and violence and strife, which happens in their own backyard, versus us, who are far removed from the battlefield. So it is an issue that needs to be reflected upon during this weekend. And Jenny Haskamp, a Marine Corps veteran, is frustrated and angry about this disconnect between those in the military and those who aren't. She writes, "I've come to realize people think Memorial Day is the official start of summer. It's grilled meat, super-duper discounts, a day or two off work, beer, potato salad, and porches draped in bunting. How is it then," she wonders, some century and a half later, after more than a decade of war in two countries that claimed the lives of 6,861 Americans, we are collectively more concerned with having a barbecue and going shopping than pausing to appreciate the cost of our freedom to do so. I believe we can do both this weekend. Remember and celebrate. In the midst of all the hustle and bustle of neighborhood cookouts, family getaways, and the din of bargain sales, I believe we can still pause and remember those who, regardless of race, religion, national origin, economic status, gender identity, sexual orientation, or immigrant status, served, fought, and died in behalf of our nation. I believe we can also pause to reflect on the evolution of this day, a day established by a disadvantaged minority to honor the war dead. We can pause to reflect on why we keep sending our young people, many of them from working, middle-class, minority, or career military families, to war, and how we brand those who oppose it. I think we can pause to reflect on our continued preoccupation with war, on our collective inability to move away from the path that leads us to self-destruction over and over again, because it is hard to make sense of war always. It is the last point of a journey that begins and finishes with a failure of the imagination, no matter what the political or social gain or outcome. I was really glad President Obama visited Hiroshima. I wish he had apologized. It was the right thing to do. He took the first step, but he could have gone and taken the next step. Not because apologizing is a sign of weakness, as some are leading us to believe, but because apologizing is a sign of strength, of self-awareness, of humility, of the willingness to take responsibility for something that has caused grievous damage. We can also pause this weekend to reflect on the question that the Reverend Kendall Gibbons asked in the reading we heard earlier: what do the living owe the dead? Especially on Memorial Day, when we consider those who died not from illness or accident or the whittling away of age, but from bullets and bombs flying madly towards them, as well as out of their own hands toward the enemy soldiers. All of them. All of these brothers and sons, and now daughters too, dead in the name of protecting those of us who go on living. What do we owe them? What redress is possible to people who go to war and come of age in that place and time? What might we imagine as redress to a generation of people who commit great acts of heroism for no purpose but to see the light of another day and help others do the same? In the histories we write, what sense might we make of what we do now and in the future as a result of really acknowledging the costs of war? And what do we owe those who come back alive, but changed forever? Because it is not enough to simply mourn and to honor the dead and move on. What do we owe the living? In assessing what we owe dead soldiers, the Washington Post considers what we don't owe: unconditional loyalty. I quote from their editorial from last year: "We owe them lasting honor for what they give up for their country, for lives cut short in youth or destroyed by physical or mental wounds. But the greater debt is for certain freedoms defended: freedom from the demand for loyalty without moral boundaries, from unquestioning obedience to higher orders, and from discipline without law or mercy." What do we owe the dead? We owe great care that the wounded are treated and attended to on their return. We owe them jobs, careers, and lives that they left behind. We owe alert attention to the political gamesmanship that seeks to treat veterans as pawns. We owe a relentless insistence on accountability from those who are charged with the responsibility for caring for our veterans. We owe them a deeper commitment to creating a better system that not only provides swift and complete care, but commits to helping our veterans reintegrate into our society as full citizens, not as second-class citizens. We cannot honor the dead unless we take good care of the living. All of them deserve our remembrance and our honor, because fundamentally the question of what we owe to all of our dead has to do with how we remember and how we let the memory deepen the integrity of our living. We have done an exceptional job in this country to sanitize death, to remove death away from our living. And we approach death in a clinical fashion. And we go through the initial ritual that we need to do, the burial or the funeral, the memorial service, and then we are done. We expect everyone to be done, to move on. We can't move on. We need more intentional rituals of sustained remembrance, not just for our beloved ones, but for our military dead as well. So we are confronted with the reality of death while we celebrate life, and thereby we are confronted with the responsibility that goes along with the decisions we make to put people in harm's way. Both by memory and by the way we bring conscious will and attention to how we live our lives, we acknowledge that the dead are still with us. We need to remember. The Reverend David Pyle, who served as an Army Reserve chaplain, puts it well. He writes, "The true meaning of Memorial Day is to remember. It is to remember that the cost of war is almost always too high. The true meaning of Memorial Day is not to honor our dead, but to remember the price they paid, to remember the price their families pay, to remember the physical and psychic wounds that the survivors of war on all sides carry with them till the end of their days, to remember the lives never lived, to remember the horrors unleashed upon civilian populations by the tools of modern warfare, to remember the losses to our national image and innocence, to remember the loss of possibility, and to remember the losses of who we were as a nation, who we could have been. We need to remember." So today we are setting aside time in our service to remember the war dead from the past year. After that ritual of remembrance, you will be invited to speak the names of your beloved ones, fallen comrades, grandparents, mothers, fathers, siblings, spouses, partners, mentors, friends, children, and fellow Cedar Lane members who died in service of our nation. Our roll call this morning reminds us that these are not nameless people who serve. So I invite you to center yourselves for a time as we begin this roll call. We remember the 30 U.S. service people who died since May 2015. Army Private First Class Montarius T. Daniel, age 19. Senior Chief Petty Officer Jason P. May, 38. Army Master Sergeant Peter A. McKenna, Jr., age 35. Air Force Captain Matthew D. Rowland, age 31. Army Specialist Kyle E. Gilbert, age 24. Navy Seaman Philip Fraser Maines, age 21. Air Force Captain Jonathan G. Golden, age 33. Air Force Sergeant Ryan D. Hammond, age 26. Air Force Senior Airman Quinn L. Johnson Harris, age 21. Air Force Captain Jordan P. Pearson, age 28. Air Force Airman Casey E. Ruiz, age 21. Air Force Senior Airman Nathan C. Sartain, age 29. Air Force Master Sergeant Gregory T. Kusey, age 38. Air Force Major Phyllis J. Pelkey, age 45. Army Master Sergeant Joshua Wheeler, age 39. Army Private Christopher J. Castaneda, age 19. Air Force Staff Sergeant Louis M. Bonacasa, age 31. Air Force Staff Sergeant Michael A. Cinco, age 28. Air Force Technical Sergeant Joseph G. Lem, age 45. Air Force Staff Sergeant Chester J. McBride, age 30. Air Force Staff Sergeant Peter W. Taub, age 28. Air Force Major Adriana M. Warderbruggen, age 36. Army Staff Sergeant Matthew Q. McClintock, age 30. Sergeant Joseph F. Stifter, age 30. Major John D. Gary, age 42. Staff Sergeant Louis F. Carden, age 27. Airman First Class Nathaniel H. McDavid, age 22. Special Warfare Operator First Class Charles H. Keating IV, age 30. First Lieutenant David A. Borders, age 25. We remember them. At this time, I would invite us all to speak aloud the names of those who are not among us, those who are now deceased, who served in the uniformed services. We speak their names that we have not forgotten, and in honor of their service. Would you join me now in the spirit of prayer and reflection with these words from the Reverend Barbara Peskin? Spirit of life, whom we have called by many names in thanksgiving and in anguish, bless the poets and those who mourn. Send peace for the soldiers who did not make the wars, but whose lives were consumed by them. Let strong trees grow about graves far from home. Breathe through the arms of their branches. The earth will swallow your tears while the dead sing, no more, never again, remember me. For the wounded ones and those who received them back, let there be someone ready when the memories come, when the scars pull, and the buried metal moves, and forgiveness for those of us who were not there for our ignorance. And in us, veterans in a forest of 1,000 fallen promises, let new leaves of protest grow on our stumps. Give us courage to answer the cry of humanity's pain, and with our bare hands, out of full hearts, with all our intelligence, let us create the peace. Free to grieve, free to remember, free to be teary if that's what flows, free to smile if that's what flows. Let the names of those people with whom we are in relationships of comfort or concern flow in our hearts. Let them flow as we recognize that our freedom is bound up with all the other freedoms that exist, and flow like graceful streams through our day-to-day lives. Free us to live not alone, O Spirit, but in a communion of forgiveness. And free us never to be so much to relive as to live. Grace, amaze us ever with yourself, where we feel wretched, lost, or sad. Fill us with the music that reminds us that we live not alone, but in harmony with all that is. In the name of all that is holy, life-affirming, life-sustaining, we say, Shalom, Salam, Om Shanti, Sat Sri Akal, Amen. Blessed be. As the ushers come forward to give and receive the offering that sustains the life, ministry, and mission of this, our beloved community, our offering reminds us that our congregation belongs to us, to each of us, as well as to the whole of us. It is an extension of our gratitude for our spiritual home, where we are invited to be who we are, to live joys of joy, hope, integrity, and service, and to be a place of blessing, remembrance, and remembering. The offering will now be given and gratefully received.
Through the work of our hands and the works of our lives, our love is made real. May we be grateful for all that we bring and share to make this a beloved community. Please rise in body and or in spirit to join in singing our closing hymn, number 159, This Is My Song, which is in your gray hymnal.
Let us then go forth on this day, a day of memory and hope, and in our going forth may that peace that passeth all understanding, the peace which the world can neither give nor take away, be with us and abide in our hearts until we meet again. Please join me as the Spirit moves you as I chant Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. We will chant it 3 times to seek inner peace, communal peace, and universal peace. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So may it be. Please be seated for the post-luke.